South Park, which has not let up on its brutal criticism of Trump week after week, is the #1 streamed show in the United States right now.
South Park just did something fans have been begging for. They finally pulled the plug on the most hated era in the show's history. After years of Tegridy Farms and Randy taking over, season 27 finally ends it. But why did fans despise it so much? And what happens now that it's gone? Let's break it down. It all started when Randy Marsh, who had always been more of a side character, decided to move his family out of their house and start a marijuana farm. The timing made sense. Cannabis was being legalized in more states, weed culture was everywhere, and South Park was ready to parody it. At first, it felt fresh. The show was poking fun at a booming industry and using Randy's cluelessness as the perfect vehicle for it. But the longer it went on, the more fans began to turn on it. Tegridy Farms didn't just show up for a handful of episodes, it stuck around. Season after season, Randy's weed business was the centerpiece of the show. And while some viewers enjoyed the satire, others felt like the original heart of South Park, the four boys, was being pushed aside. That's when the debates really started. Online forums, fan reviews, and ranking polls began calling Tegridy Farms the weakest storyline in South Park history. People said it dragged on, that Randy had taken over too much of the show, and that the randomness of the early days had been replaced by a single joke stretched too thin. Of course, not everyone agreed. Some fans thought it was one of the boldest moves Trey Parker and Matt Stone had ever made. They liked seeing Randy in the spotlight and thought the weed farm gave the show a new kind of identity. But the divide was impossible to ignore. By the time Tegridy had run its course, it had earned a reputation as the most hated era in South Park's long run. And at the center of it all was Randy Marsh, the man who went from Stan's dad to the most controversial character in the show. Once Tegridy Farms became a permanent fixture, something else happened. Randy Marsh went from being just Stan's dad to the full-blown star of South Park. And for a lot of fans, that's when the frustration really kicked in. Think about Randy's role before this era. He was the goofy background parent who'd get caught up in fads or overreact to small-town nonsense. He was never meant to carry entire seasons. But when Tegridy hit, suddenly the spotlight was all on him. Every major plotline revolved around Randy's decisions, his ego, and his bizarre attempts to run a weed empire. And here's the problem. South Park was always built on the boys. Cartman scheming, Kyle calling him out, Stan stuck in the middle, and Kenny dying in the corner. That dynamic was the core of the show. But during the Tegridy years, those four barely showed up. Episodes that once followed the kids navigating their insane town now focused almost entirely on Randy's latest mess. At first, some viewers thought it was funny watching Randy spiral out of control. He represented that middle-aged man chasing trends, always convinced his next big idea would change the world. But after years of it, the joke started to wear thin. Whole seasons became dominated by his farm, his Tegridy speeches, and his questionable business moves. For longtime fans, this felt like the show had lost balance. Instead of small-town satire filtered through the kids, it was Randy making himself the main character over and over again. And the more the show doubled down on him, the louder the backlash grew. Forums filled with posts saying things like, "South Park isn't about Randy, it's about the boys. Bring them back." But the creators weren't done experimenting. Randy wasn't alone in this takeover. Another character, one with his own controversial history, kept reappearing during this era. And almost every time he did, fans knew the episode was going to be divisive. If Randy Marsh became the face of South Park's most hated era, then then Towley was its unlucky sidekick. Every time this talking towel showed up, it almost guaranteed the episode would spark debate among fans. Towley has always been a strange character in South Park's lineup. He first appeared as a joke about lazy, one-note characters, literally a towel who tells people not to forget to bring a towel and spends most of his time getting high. And while that randomness made him memorable, it also made him controversial. Some fans loved the absurdity, while others felt he represented the show at its weakest. The evidence is pretty clear. According to IMDb rankings, one of the lowest-rated South Park episodes of all time is A Million Little Fibers, an episode centered entirely on Towley. Later, he popped up again in Crippled Summer, another episode many fans consider among the show's weaker outings. So when Tegridy Farms became the main storyline and Towley re-entered the picture, fans braced themselves. Sure enough, the combination of Randy's farm plots and Towley's antics often turned into the very episodes that split audiences the most. For some, Towley was a cult favorite, an underdog side character who made everything weirder. But for many, his presence became a red flag. If Towley was back, it usually meant the story wasn't going to land with everyone. And that pattern continued into season 27. When episode 3, Sycophancy, brought Towley back in a major role, fans immediately pointed out the history. Once again, he was tied to one of the season's most divisive installments. It almost felt like a curse. Whenever Towley stepped into the spotlight, the reaction was destined to be split. But this time, it wasn't just about Towley. It was about something much bigger. Episode 3 leaned heavily into a new theme that everyone has been talking about in real life: artificial intelligence. And the way South Park used it turned the spotlight from Randy and Towley to an even larger cultural debate. By the time Sycophancy aired, the conversation around artificial intelligence was everywhere. ChatGPT, AI-generated art, and automated writing tools had suddenly gone mainstream. So, of course, South Park jumped on it, and in true South Park fashion, it wasn't subtle. In this episode, Randy decides that the solution to his collapsing Tegridy Farms empire isn't hard work or compromise or even reality. It's AI. Instead of going to therapy like Sharon suggests, he turns to ChatGPT to solve his problems. What follows is one of the most biting parodies of AI yet, not just in South Park, but in any piece of pop culture. The show paints ChatGPT as a sycophant, a yes-man program that praises every idea, no matter how bad it is. Sharon proves this perfectly when she tests the software herself, feeding it a ridiculous idea about turning French fries into salad. Instead of shutting it down, the AI gushes about how brilliant it is. That moment drives home the episode's central point. AI can flatter. It can imitate, but it can't replace genuine human judgment. And Randy, being Randy, falls for it completely. He leans on the chatbot to run his business, to make decisions, even to give him emotional support. At one point, Sharon catches him cheating on her with ChatGPT, treating the program like a partner that always agrees with him. It's absurd, but it's also a sharp jab at how some people treat AI tools as more than just tools. But South Park doesn't stop there. The parody digs deeper, exposing how easy it is to manipulate these systems. In the episode, Randy and Towley use ChatGPT to talk their way past security, to craft business pitches, even to figure out how to break into a government facility. The writers are pointing out something real here. AI can be bent to give you the answer you want, as long as you phrase the question the right way. This wasn't the first time South Park tackled AI, but it was the most direct. And while some fans thought the parody was brilliant, others complained it felt repetitive, since earlier seasons had already taken swings at the same subject. Still, There's no denying the way AI dominated sycophancy. It shifted the focus of the episode away from the farm itself and into a bigger critique of tech culture. And speaking of tech culture, this episode didn't stop with AI. It went even further, dragging in another very real obsession shaping Silicon Valley: ketamine. South Park doubled down, mixing in politics, drug culture, and tech industry satire all at once. And that's part of why the episode ended up being so polarizing. The ketamine storyline hits first. Randy and Towley, inspired by the Silicon Valley crowd, decide to microdose ketamine to unlock creativity for their rebranded company, Tegridy. The show paints it exactly how you'd expect. Randy stumbling into bizarre dissociative trips, falling into what he calls K-holes, while insisting it's part of his business plan. On the surface, it's hilarious, but beneath the slapstick, it's a direct parody of how real tech executives openly talk about ketamine treatments, something Elon Musk himself has acknowledged using. At the same time, the episode pulls in politics. Donald Trump, now president in the South Park universe, is shown ruling from Washington, D.C., with a heavy military presence. The city is lined with soldiers, statues, and parades of sycophantic CEOs eager to shower him with gifts. It's classic South Park exaggeration, but with a sharp edge, parodying real fears about authoritarianism and Trump's grip on corporate America. And it doesn't stop with Trump. Apple CEO Tim Cook and Meta's Mark Zuckerberg are also roasted, portrayed as groveling tech leaders desperate to keep their place at the table. They line up, flatter the president, and play into South Park's favorite recurring theme, that power attracts sycophants. The same theme tied directly back to Randy's reliance on ChatGPT, creating a thread between the farm, the AI, and the political circus. But here's the thing, stuffing all of this into one episode made it feel overwhelming to some viewers. Randy's ketamine trips, the AI satire, Trump's military backdrop, tech bros kissing boots. It was a lot. Earlier in season 27, episodes like Sermon on the Mount and Got a Nut worked because they were focused, sharp, and fast. By contrast, sycophancy felt like it was juggling too many targets at once. For some fans, that chaotic overload was exactly the point. South Park has always thrived on excess, and the mashup of AI, ketamine, and Trump was a perfect snapshot of 2025's absurd reality. But for others, it was exhausting, proof that Tegridy Farms had dragged the show into a swamp of scattershot satire. And all of that built to one moment: the downfall of Tegridy itself. After years of dragging the Marsh family through one failed scheme after another, sycophancy finally delivered the moment fans had been waiting for: the end of Tegridy Farms. And it wasn't a big explosion or a shocking twist. It ended with something far more grounded: Randy finally admitting defeat. The turning point comes when Sharon, who's put up with Randy's nonsense for seasons now, calls him out. She reminds him that Tegridy was never the family's dream. It was his. The kids never wanted the farm, she never asked for it, and the only thing it ever really brought them was chaos. It's a rare serious moment in an otherwise ridiculous episode. And for fans, it was huge. It meant the writers were acknowledging what viewers had been shouting online for years: that Tegridy had overstayed its welcome. Randy, of course, doesn't get there on his own. He spends much of the episode relying on ChatGPT, tripping on ketamine, and chasing one more big break. But when Sharon mirrors the way ChatGPT talks, overly flattering, overly supportive, he finally snaps out of it. He realizes that empty praise won't save him, and that his family is done sacrificing for his ego. In a symbolic gesture, he even hands over his phone, cutting himself off from the AI he'd been leaning on for every decision. From there, the Marsh family does something simple but powerful. They pack up. Boxes, bags, and memories get loaded, and Tegridy Farms is officially closed. After years of being the backdrop to South Park's most divisive era, the farm is gone. The image of them leaving wasn't just the end of a storyline, it was a signal to fans that a reset was finally coming. Of course, in true Randy fashion, he forgets that Towelie has been left behind at the White House, now trapped as a gift to Trump. But that's classic South Park, never wrapping everything up neatly, always leaving a thread dangling for future chaos. Still, the core moment stands. Tegridy Farms is finished. The era that many fans called the weakest in the show's history had finally been put to rest. And once that farm was gone, the reaction from fans and critics made it clear just how divided people still were about everything that led up to this moment. For some, it was pure relief. They had been waiting for seasons to see Randy's weed empire shut down, and the Marsh family moving out felt like a victory. To them, Sycophancy wasn't just another episode, it was closure. But for others, the episode felt underwhelming, a messy send-off that didn't live up to the weight of ending such a long-running storyline. That split was obvious the night the episode aired. Social media threads filled with comments calling it the weakest episode of the season, while others claimed it was the funniest thing South Park has done in years. On Reddit, fans debated whether Towelie being gifted to Trump was a darkly hilarious punchline or just lazy writing. And in forums, arguments broke out over whether Randy handing over his phone to Sharon was a real character moment or just another fake-out destined to be forgotten in the next episode. Critics were just as divided. Ren Graves of Consequence praised the AI satire as one of the sharpest parts of the season, highlighting how perfectly the show captured ChatGPT's sycophant behavior. Zach Vasquez of The Guardian agreed that the episode's commentary on over-reliance on AI was refreshingly clear, but he also noted that the punch didn't hit as hard as South Park's earlier episodes this season. Other outlets were harsher, dismissing Sycophancy as filler compared to the high bar set by Sermon on the Mount and Got a Nut. Even among fans, there was a sense of exhaustion. Some viewers admitted they weren't even angry about the episode. They were just tired of Tegridy Farms. For them, the real win wasn't whether Sycophancy was good or bad. It was that the farm was gone. In their eyes, the most hated era of South Park had officially ended, and that was reason enough to celebrate. But others argued that, like it or not, Tegridy Farms was still part of South Park history. They pointed out that even the weakest arcs have a place in the show's legacy. Years from now, they said, people would look back at this era the same way fans now talk about the Cartoon Wars or the Imagination Land trilogy. Controversial in the moment, but unforgettable in the bigger picture. With Tegridy Farms finally gone, South Park is standing at a crossroads. The farm arc defined years of the show, and whether fans loved it or hated it, it shaped the way people saw South Park in the modern era. Now that it's over, the question isn't just what's next, it's what does South Park look like without the weight of its most controversial storyline? For longtime viewers, there's hope this marks a return to basics. Some are already calling for the classic format. The four boys back at the bus stop, caught up in the bizarre problems of their small Colorado town. Those episodes, built on the dynamic between Cartman, Kyle, Stan, and Kenny, are still considered the heart of South Park. Ending Tegridy Farms might be the first step toward recapturing that spirit. But there's also another possibility. South Park has never been content to just repeat the past. Each era has pushed into new territory, and it's entirely possible the next chapter will focus on fresh storylines, new characters, and bigger cultural targets. If Season 27's first two episodes proved anything, It's that the show can still land biting satire when it focuses in the right places. At the same time, the writers now face a challenge. The divisive reaction to sycophancy made it clear that audiences aren't easy to please. The shock value that once defined South Park, like Trump in bed with Satan or over-the-top violence, isn't as shocking anymore. To keep fans hooked, the show has to evolve again without losing its core. What makes this moment so interesting is that South Park has been here before. It's survived controversies, shifts in tone, even claims that the show was done more times than anyone can count. Each time, it's managed to reinvent itself and stay relevant. That's why, even as one era ends, fans are already looking ahead, waiting to see if the next one will be remembered as a renaissance or as another misstep. For now, all we know is this: the most hated era is over. The Marsh family has packed up, Tegridy Farms is closed, and a new chapter is about to begin. Whether it's a return to the boys or something entirely different, South Park has once again proven that, love it or hate it, the show is never afraid to move forward. So, what do you think? Did South Park just save itself? Or is another disaster waiting around the corner? Drop your take in the comments, smash that like button, share it with friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns.